Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam, and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies. And today I want to tell you about 10 sci-fi double features you can currently catch on HBO and HBO Max. So 10 double features is a list of 20 movies. There are 20 really great sci-fi movies on HBO Max. Most of them are also available with basic HBO right now, and they all make fantastic double features. So I've got these ranked in order of which ones make the best double features, not necessarily which ones have the best movies in them, even though it basically pans out that way, but there are some really great movies towards the back of the list. But let's start all the way back at number 10 with two fairly fun-spirited movies that are kind of about time travel. They are Frequency and Frequently Asked Questions About Time Travel, easily the longest title on this list. Frequency is just a fantastic crowd pleaser of a movie about a father and son that are actually communicating with each other over a ham radio across about 30 years, give or take. So it's not really about time travel, but because they're communicating in two different time periods, they are able to do some pretty nifty little time travel type things, including solving a mystery. Trust me, it's cooler than it sounds. It's a little bit by the book and it's a little bit formulaic, which is what makes it a crowd pleaser, but it is a very entertaining movie, and with a PG-13 rating, it's one of the more family-friendly movies on this list. And then Frequently Asked Questions About Time Travel is actually a made-for-TV comedy. It's actually an HBO original movie from several years ago that stars Chris O'Dowd, and it's about a few friends hanging out in a pub, and they learn that there's a stall in the bathroom where they can time travel, and it's just a silly comedy. There's nothing that's going to blow your mind about this movie, which is why it's the second in this pairing. If you like Frequency and it's just a good, solid, sort of popcorn type of a movie, Frequently Asked Questions could be a really fun way to end the night as you approach midnight.
I don't want to do it. Dude, I don't want to do it.
Okay, are you ready?
Okay,
Come on, do it.
Give me a countdown.
I will,
okay?
I promise. Ah!
Now my next pair both feature superpowers, but they're done in a very different way than you're used to seeing in movies. Now, first one in this pair is Chronicle. This one actually had some really big success at the box office, more so than it was predicted to do. While this was a mid-level project, I mean, it was shot for millions of dollars, not hundreds of millions of dollars, it did really well at the box office because it's a cool flick. It's about a group of teenage boys that discover basically a hole in the ground, and without giving too much away, they suddenly have access to powers that they never would have had before, and it's wild stuff. I mean, they can fly and manipulate things, and the great thing about Chronicle is it goes in a dark direction, which is different than you would normally see in a movie like this, and it's done really well. It feels fairly realistic, even though you're seeing these big, spectacular visuals. It works better than most movies done in this fashion. And then Sleight is a fantastic follow-up. This one was done for very, very little money, and it works really, really well. This is directed by J.D. Dillard, who also did Sweetheart, a movie I've recommended multiple times on Netflix. He is an up-and-coming director. He's doing bigger and bigger stuff all the time. This is his first big feature, and it has set him up for a fantastic career. It's a really cool flick, and it's got a little twist to the way that things work that is different than you've seen in any other kind of superhero movie. It's fun stuff. My only complaint, and I've said this on the channel before, is the movie doesn't quite feel finished. It feels like there's something missing, like a whole segment. It sort of concludes quickly, but that's why it's my second pick. It's a fantastic follow-up to Chronicle. It just doesn't quite hit you in the teeth the way that you want it to. It's missing something, but still, a great movie and a great sort of midnight movie follow-up to Chronicle. Two of the newest sci-fi releases on HBO right now also make the list. That is The Invisible Man and Underwater, both from 2020, and both among my favorite movies of 2020. I know not a lot came out, but these are both up there, and I was surprised by one of these. Now, The Invisible Man is my first recommendation, and I was not surprised by this movie. I was expecting this movie to be good, and it is. Obviously, this is a remake, a retelling, whatever you want to call it, of the classic Invisible Man, but this one is directed by Leigh Whannell, whose previous movie was Upgrade, one of the most surprising movies of the year, just a fantastic sci-fi gem. I cannot recommend it enough. And while I don't like The Invisible Man as much as Upgrade, it does have a lot of the same qualities, and it did have some surprises and just some great tense moments, some great performances, and despite being something I'd seen before, The Invisible Man, it felt different, and I feel like the things that he changed in this version only worked to serve it better. They worked to surprise you and to dazzle you and show you something different than you've seen in an Invisible Man movie, and it just works really well. It's a fantastic pick if you've passed on it because you felt like, oh, I've seen The Invisible Man, I don't need to see another remake of it. I'm telling you, this one is top notch. And then Underwater was a just fantastic surprise of 2020. I'm well aware that this movie got mixed reviews. I kind of see why. I think there were way too many comparisons being made to Alien. Aesthetically, the movie does borrow from Alien quite a bit. In fact, it rips it off straight up in a lot of ways, as well as some other movies, but that's about it. It's a very different type of movie with a very different pace and a very fast pace. Within the first 5 minutes, this movie kicks off and it basically doesn't stop. Yeah, you get characters taking a minute to sort of talk to each other, things like that, but this is a wild sort of Poseidon adventure type thing where they're in this underwater station, very much like a space station, and it's collapsing and they're having to work their way out of it. They're wearing these big suits. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen Kristen Stewart in. It's really probably my favorite thing I've ever seen her in, and she is good in it. I've not ever really been particularly fond of her, but I may have changed my mind with this one. I mean, honestly, it is fun. So if you go into this one with the right mindset just to have fun and watch kind of a wild underwater adventure type movie, this one does play it a little too safe for my taste, but I still really enjoyed the overall adventure and enjoyed the aesthetic, even if it is borrowed from some better movies. Now, two movies about a man marooned on Manhattan are I Am Legend and Escape from New York. Now, I Am Legend is also kind of a remake. I mean, yes, it's the first movie with that title, and there is something different about it, but there was a movie called The Omega Man with Charlton Heston, and another with Vincent Price that are basically the same movie, but I Am Legend is a good one. The only real problem is they played it a little too safe. They went for PG-13, and they went with these CGI monsters or zombies, whatever you want to call them, that are not nearly as menacing as they could have been had they gone with real practical effects and real people, in the vein of something like 28 Days Later. This could have been a really intense, terrifying movie. That said, there are some great moments in it. Will Smith manages to carry this thing, even though he's really the only actor on screen, almost in the entire movie, almost. And visually, the movie's just stunning to see these big shots of Manhattan. The graphics are starting to get a little bit dated looking, but they do still look pretty convincing considering this movie is over 10 years old already. And then Escape from New York. Longtime viewers know this is one of my favorite movies. I love it. It is far back on the list because I think the pairing with I Am Legend is not as good as some of the other ones on this list, but still, just 80s classic. And because of the whole Manhattan thing, even though there are a lot more people stuck on Manhattan because it has been turned into a prison, it's got a very similar theme to it and just makes a really great pairing. Because it is the older one that's a little more bonkers with more violence and things, I consider it to be more kind of the midnight movie type, which is why I recommend watching it after I Am Legend if you still got the energy for it. Now, two alien-themed movies that I really like a lot. I like these movies both, but they both have mixed reviews, and some people hate them. That is Prometheus and Dreamcatcher. Now, let's go ahead and start with Prometheus, which is essentially the prequel to the Alien franchise and is actually still directed by Ridley Scott. And I think Ridley Scott did some amazing things with this movie. One, just being visually, it's really impressive looking, and it also establishes some lore and things behind the Alien franchise that I think work really well. And then it maybe over-explains some things and then does some silly things that I know a lot of people have problems with. However, aesthetically, again, I think it's an amazing movie, and it brushes up against some really interesting themes but I think they muddled with this movie too much. They brought in too many writers and it got convoluted, and it's multiple people's story that gets a little bit jumbled up. However, I have watched this many times over the years, and I'm able to sort of sift through and see sort of the heart of this one that they were trying to make. And even though it's not totally successful at that, I still really appreciate what they were aiming for with this one, because it was pretty ambitious in terms of its concept. And then Dreamcatcher is based on a Stephen King book, and it is a really cool alien invasion thing. It just does some of the weird things that I don't like Stephen King to do. There's a special needs character that is way too crucial to the story, and it just feels forced, and it feels like Stephen King just cannot get out of his own way with that. It doesn't feel unique or special because Stephen King does that all the time. So that's a little distracting. So there's several weird things kind of psychologically going on with Dreamcatcher. The thing I love about it though is the depiction of the alien invasion is really cool. You got this great little outside the box role for Morgan Freeman, him doing something he normally doesn't do, and then the look of the aliens, the way that the invasion is sort of handled is just one of the cooler ones I've seen in movies. And it's a very long movie, again with some weird stuff, making it another sort of good midnight movie pick. If you've never watched it, I do recommend it, just with the caveat that there's some weird stuff going on in this one. So if you've been a viewer for a while, you like my movie recommendations, and you want even more recommendations of movies and TV shows, please consider becoming a channel member. That way you get access to exclusive videos every week like these, and you never run out of good movies to watch. Most of the videos I'm creating for channel members are additional movie recommendations, series reviews, but also there's a video on a Netflix hack of how to find some of the best movies on Netflix. Every week I create something tailor-made just for my channel members. There's a link in the description or a join button under the video. Check it out, see if it's a good fit for you. It's a great way to support the channel while also getting some bonus content out of it. But let's go ahead and move on with my top 5 picks on this list. Now, my next pairing feature time travel, but they're also done by the same director, Terry Gilliam, and that is Time Bandits and 12 Monkeys. Now, Time Bandits is an 80s classic, easily the most family-friendly movie on this list. It's about a young boy who's sort of, I hate to say the word abducted, but he's basically abducted by these time-traveling dwarves, and they're just leaping in and out of different time periods looking for treasure. This movie, even though it is really dated, has an amazing, rich look to it, and that is Terry Gilliam. That is what he is known for. It's sort of the richness and depth to his worlds, and obviously that's not just him, that's his production designer doing it, but still, amazing costumes, sets, everything looks incredible in this movie, and it does hold up. While there's nothing necessarily inappropriate for children in it, it could be frightening to some younger kids because it is about a child who's essentially abducted by dwarves who leap through different time periods. And Terry Gilliam has this very sort of creepy overall look and feel, but Time Bandits is an absolute gem. It's really cool that it actually is included with HBO at the moment. And then I also recommend Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys. Now this came out a whole decade later, stars Bruce Willis, but it has a very similar look to it. However, it is much more dark, and this one is not family friendly whatsoever. It was a big movie when it came out. It was nominated for Academy Awards, I think mostly for the look and feel of it, some of the artistic stuff, and it does look cool, and it's got a really complicated story. Brad Pitt has one of his wonkier characters he's ever played, and not just because he's got a wonky eye in it. I mean, he's a maniac in this movie, but it's a very well-known movie. Hey, if it's been a while since you've seen it, this could make for a great evening to watch Time Bandits with the kids, get them in bed, and then watch 12 Monkeys. Now, my next pairing is a little odd in the way that I'm recommending it, but I will explain why I'm recommending Mad Max Fury Road to be watched before Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. Now, the interesting thing about the Mad Max universe is that all the movies are different. Yes, the original trilogy all stars Mel Gibson, but the way the vision of this sort of post-apocalyptic world evolves from movie to movie in the original trilogy is incredibly drastic. It's completely different worlds you're in each one, and then Fury Road takes things to a completely new level, and it doesn't appear to be a sequel or a remake. It's sort of this interesting retelling because Tom Hardy's younger, Tom Hardy is not playing the same Mad Max that Mel Gibson was playing. They're different movies done by the same director, just working out this sort of incredible idea and vision that he has. So Mad Max Fury Road is easily the most intense one. It's one of the most intense and best composed action movies to have come out this century, hands down. It's not questionable. It is a masterpiece of action. A lot of storytelling is done with action in ways that is so much more effective than any other action movie that has come out in recent memory. And I love this movie, the look of it. It's intense, it's wild, it's fun, it's accessible. It's honestly, it checks so many boxes. It's possibly one of the greatest movies ever made. Mad Max 2, however, is a really fun follow-up because this is where Fury Road comes from. This is the second attempt from George Miller. I love Mad Max. I think it's a great movie that stands on its own. But then this post-apocalyptic world that he built in Mad Max 2 is incredible. It's rich. It feels the most like the world in common with Fury Road. There's some similarities in terms of some of the action. They make a great pairing. They're the most two that are alike. Because Mad Max 2 is the older one with older effects, but still sort of this wild, bonkers flavor to it, it makes for the great midnight movie. And Fury Road is just a great way to kick off a real sort of adrenaline-infused evening. Now, as beautiful as Mad Max Fury Road is, and some of the others that I've talked about, easily the most stunning pair on this list is Blade Runner 2049 and Dune. Now, these make a great pairing because the director of Blade Runner 2049, Denis Villeneuve, has just completed the new Dune, which is going to be available on HBO Max later this year. It looks like maybe October. So I think it's great to watch Blade Runner 2049, which is just a rich, beautiful movie that, yes, does follow up to Blade Runner, which is also available on HBO Max, but the reason I didn't pair those two together is because I think you can watch Blade Runner 2049 on its own, even though it is connected to Blade Runner. Honestly, you should have seen Blade Runner by now, but it's more accessible than Blade Runner, I think. Even if you're going to be a little bit lost, it's stunning. It deals with some incredible themes. In fact, I did a full video years ago on all the similarities between 2049 and Pinocchio, and there are more than you would think. There's a link to that video in the description if you're interested. But then Dune was directed by David Lynch, and it's the least Lynchian of all of his movies. So David Lynch is known for really wild, wonky movies, and Dune is his big studio movie that he hated doing because the studio made him do a bunch of stuff he didn't want to do. They basically made him kind of make this one more accessible, and it is, but it's still got this amazing design to it. It looks incredible, and it's a great sort of palette preparation, I guess, for the new Dune, even though it doesn't come out for at least another 6 months. Now, I've got some more vintage movies coming up, but these are ones that have been remastered. They look incredible. They don't look like they were filmed in the 70s, even though they were. And these are some sci-fi classics from Stanley Kubrick and George Lucas. And no, it is not Star Wars. I'm talking about THX 1138 and 2001 A Space Odyssey, in that order. THX 1138 is the first feature film from director George Lucas. He did this before American Graffiti, and then eventually went on to do Star Wars. But this movie did come out a few years after 2001 and is easily influenced by it, and we'll talk more about that in 1 minute. But THX stars Robert Duvall hundreds of years in the future. People are essentially living underground in this very clean, pristine environment, and their entire world is controlled. Everything they do is under control, and it's about a man that's trying to sort of break through. And it's about a man that's kind of breaking free from this prison. Now, while there are some great visuals that were done in the 70s when this movie came out, this movie does have some CGI added into it. Not much, but you will notice it, but it does add to the story. I don't love that George Lucas did that with the Star Wars movies, but it's a little more subtle here, and honestly, without it, I could see where there were maybe some holes in the original story, so it's not really a problem with THX. Now, this is a weird movie, but it is a classic sci-fi movie that was the predecessor to Star Wars. They're not really alike in any kind of way, but this is required viewing for movie buffs. just like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now, the only problem with putting 2001 second is it is so long and the ending is so weird, but honestly, that might be the best way to watch it, is to be exhausted, to have your brain ready to go to sleep when you get hit with the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey. People who have seen it know what I'm talking about. People who have not, you're out of the club, you're confused, you don't know why I'm being so weird in the way I'm talking about the end of this movie, but once you watch it, you will understand. This movie, again, predates Star Wars by quite a bit and invented a lot of the technology that would later be used for Star Wars and other movies like it. It still looks incredible today. It looks like it was shot recently. It is very slow paced, but allow that to be part of the experience, because it is. You kind of want to spend a little more time in these environments that are so well crafted and feel so incredibly real. This movie also features a pretty incredible opening that begins with prehistoric man. It manages to work really well. You just have to be patient with this one, but this one's wild and is really just one hell of a trip. Now, my first pick is easily one of the greatest sci-fi double features of all time, and it includes the only actual pairing of an original and sequel on this list. That is Alien and Aliens. These two movies work together so incredibly well while being so incredibly different at the same time. So, Alien is directed by Ridley Scott and is a horror movie. 100%. It's essentially a haunted house type movie, the setup for it anyway. It's brilliant in so many ways. The concept is brilliant. The production design is amazing. Again, this movie looks real. It looks like it was filmed yesterday. It's got this raw, sort of visceral look to it. Look at some other space movies that came out in the 70s. They don't look nearly as good as Alien, and Alien still just looks so good today, just proving that it can be done. And one of the most interesting things about Alien is you're halfway into the movie. It's 45 minutes before anything really dramatic happens. The time spent with the crew before that is still engaging. It still works. So a lot of great stuff going on in Alien. Now, while Aliens has a lot of horror aspects, this is directed by James Cameron, one of the greatest sci-fi action directors of all time, if not the greatest sci-fi action director of all time. And Aliens is less of a horror movie and more of an all-out action movie. Conceptually, the way it follows up on Alien, I think is brilliant. You do jump ahead in time. It works. There's more firepower than there was in the first one, which is a very different scenario. It's one of the best sequels ever made. Sequels often try to repeat what the original did, and they don't do so well, and it's not as novel because they're repeating it and it's already been done before. And Aliens brilliantly went in a different direction, and it is the better movie because of it. People will often debate as to which one of the two is the best. So let's go ahead and wrap up there and let me know in the comments below which one's better, Alien or Aliens. Let's also thank the Patreon supporters. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, there is a link in the description below. But like I mentioned earlier in the video, there's also a link down there where you can become a channel member, which is another great way to support the channel while getting access to exclusive videos, which means additional movie recommendations and reviews, as well as TV shows. So go check those out if you're interested in supporting the channel. But as always, likes, comments, and shares also really help the channel out a lot. But I will keep making videos like this one just as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for watching this HBO Max episode, and you will see me on the next one.